Everyone wants more money, but most of us weren't taught how to create an abundant life. That's where the More Money Show comes in. If you're ready to have more money, create more freedom, and experience more fun, turn the volume up. It's time to learn how to create the prosperity and life you have been dreaming of. Here's your host, Cassie Parks.
Hello and welcome to this episode. I am normally your host, Cassie Parks, but today Rebekah Zink is here to interview me. So welcome, Rebekah. How are you?
Hi, Cassie. I am fabulous. It's been a while.
I know. I'm so excited. Just catch our listeners up a little bit in what's awesome in your life and what's unfolding.
So I had this client that had given me a lot of stress for about a year and a half, and I had a long-term plan to offboard them, and then out of nowhere, they decided to offboard me.
Awesome.
Because they had decided to just completely remove contractors. And so I was like, oh, okay. So thank you, universe. It was a little unsettling at first, but it has given me the freedom to pursue other projects. So I'm actually working on an app idea with an Emmy award-winning producer, and I have decided to enter the romance industry as an author. So I am currently about 12,000 words into my first novel. And then, my clients are doing great, and I have a conference in March, a big conference that I'm excited for, and I'm going with my mom. And me and my mom also just got back from India about a week ago. We were there for 2 weeks, so that was a whole thing.
Amazing.
Things are good.
Hey, that's awesome.
I
love it. Cool. Nice. Well, whenever you are ready, jump right in, and this is fun.
Okay. Yes. Fun. All right. So I'm just going to start off with more like background type questions, because I realize I don't actually know a lot of how you got to be where you are. So my first question is, what was the moment that made you decide that you needed a change?
Oh, the moment I decided. I think there were a couple. So there was one, there's a self-love defining moment, really, which was a relationship that was not great and healthy. And I was like, I have to choose me, right? And so that, I think, was a huge self-defining moment that opened up to a lot of other moments. There was one other moment, and I realized I had, I was doing the work like lots of people, or thought I was doing LOA, and I was talking about it, and I was doing a lot. I will give myself that credit. I was doing a lot. I was also doing a lot of like forcing and wanting and going after as well. And I had set this goal as a business 1 year, and I was like, I'm going to launch a product a month or something. And which was like, seemed easy and whatever. And I did it a couple months, and it felt good. Like executing it felt good. But there just came a moment, and I don't know if it was actually tied to that or not, but I realized like I was working and forcing and trying to get my business to run so much that I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm not going to. It was so much time and energy is what it was. And this is when I still had my job. And I just remember like it was almost this letting go of like, I'm just not doing that. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I'm not doing this anymore. Like I'm not giving up my life to try and get a life, like,
oh yeah, I know very well.
Like, it doesn't make sense right now. And so I think that was just a moment. There was nothing, it's not like I just let go. And then really things started to move. That's really when I would say, looking back, is one of the first moments where I started really doing my own future self-work and really being more, okay, well, what is it that you really want? Number one. And number two, and that was financial independence. I wanted to not have to go to work. Like I wanted to be free and have time. Right. And so really like starting to focus on that and practicing like being that person instead of wanting my business to succeed, like wanting what I really wanted, which was time and freedom and financial independence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Because I've always been like, how did you get here?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question.
Thanks. So then follow up to that is, how did you find the law of attraction, and what made you choose that over all of the other mindset paths that you could have taken?
Oh, I love this question. So the first time I learned the law of attraction in like 7th grade science, like attracts
Really?
like, yeah, like, and not in this big sort of way that we teach it now, but like, this is a law, like attracts like, it's a universal law, or like attracts like, universal law. And so for me, like, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And somewhere along the line, like, I was an athlete, and so I knew about visualization, and I don't know that I necessarily connected those two, but the first time that I manifested anything that I consciously remember and consciously chose was in 8th grade. We had this contest, like, say, if you sold so many things, you got entered into this drawing to win $20. And I went home that night and like sold all the things. That part was easy. And before I went to sleep, like, I closed my eyes and I visualized myself getting called, and like, it was in the choir room. So walking down the steps and getting my $20. And the next day I won. And so that's like the start. And then just, I think, being an athlete and studying different things, I always thought I wanted to be a counselor. And I started getting my master's in counseling, and I was like, there has to be something quicker.
Oh.
Yeah, I was like, I don't know if this is my life. Like, I think there's something more. And right at that time, like an energetic modality came in that I started studying as well. And so, and it was all LOA, whether along the path, whether anyone like called it that. And so then I just, really kind of dove more in, and yeah.
And it worked, obviously.
Yeah, totally.
You're still a counselor.
Yeah.
You're still ultimately a counselor.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So then how has LOA impacted your relationships, both good and bad? Everyone wants to talk about the good, but
Right.
sometimes there are negative.
Well,
Maybe there aren't.
I mean, I wouldn't say call them negative, but it affects relationships in that as you naturally evolve and as you naturally grow and as you naturally step more into who you are in your future self, like, some things don't click anymore. It's interesting that you're asking this question today. I was just at a wedding with somebody that was very close to me for a long time. We were good friends, and as I grew, like, something just shifted and we're not anymore, and I still love her and, whatever, but like, we just couldn't like find that the vibe that just didn't click anymore. Right. And I think that's the thing, is that things change, and relationships are one of those. And you never know. Honestly, you don't know who's going to rise with you and who's going to fall. And you can't guess that. Right. Like, for sure. Stories on the other side of where I set big intentions for friends to grow and do things with me, and the people who, like, in particular, one of my friends that sort of what I would call rose up, and that doesn't mean like she was down, it just means she came up with me, right? Was not somebody I would have expected. And so I think the biggest way is just that things shift and your relationships shift, and sometimes that means being more aware and letting go. And it means some things that you loved, you still get to love. You just love them in the past. And I mean, you can still love them in the present, but it's just different.
It's a different kind of love. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
yeah, I think it kind of covered both answers.
Okay. So then when it comes to business, it seems easy to have things come your way, but there is still some work that needs to get done.
So a little technical difficulty,
Okay,
but go ahead,
good.
Rebekah, because I think this is one of the questions that is so important to people.
Okay. Um, So when it comes to business, because we're both business owners and entrepreneurs, and I know you've worked with me a lot on this, but when it comes to business, it seems easy to have things just kind of come your way and fall into your lap, but work does still need to get done. And I
Mhm.
was wondering, how do you work through any apathy, or insert negative word here, when it comes to getting that work done?
Yeah. So I think like not, and I just want to highlight this for listeners. I think what you're asked, like, how do you get this stuff done when you don't want to do it? Right. Um, and so for me, I've built that, like I've gone through it. So I think the answer, I'll answer it for me now, and I'll also answer it for somebody sort of starting this journey, is that um, I've built the business that I love. And I started, and and as I have grown, I've been able to weed out anything that I don't actually need to do. And so most people think that's like, oh, hand this off to a VA, but it's really about stepping into the trust, it's about not, this is a great example with you. It's about doing social media how it feels good, not like anybody else says it should be done. Right. And knowing
Yes.
it. And deciding, and
I
for
will
me,
always remember that conversation.
it's the best. I use it all the time. Like I think I said, I had a client, and like that's not what she needs, like it. And I just tell the story, like she is amazing and creating all this business, and she doesn't have social media because it doesn't feel good to her. And it's true when
Yeah.
you really learn, and it's a process of trusting, right? It's trusting, like, oh, I can let go of this. Oh, somebody says I should do that, because I think there's like the work. So like when we're talking, like, for me, it's getting on and coaching clients, and it's sending out some emails, which even, I can find a way to make those feel better. And for you, it's, there's work to be done for the clients. And so one of the things, I think it all starts at the beginning. It starts in saying yes to what you really love. And sometimes in the beginning, you do say yes to a little bit more as you learn and as you grow, and the universe gives you opportunities to get clear. So sometimes in the beginning, we take on those things we don't like so that we get real clear, like, nope, this is what I want. This is what I want more of. And I'm going to say no and trust this part in the future. And it really is a journey, but as you go along, you just really start saying yes to what you love and no to what you don't. And you trust the ebb and flow, and you trust inspiration, and I have a great example of this. I've been wanting to update, and sort of inspiration's been coming to put this video on my website about the Enchanted Circle. And it's just been letting it brew and brew. And then last week I was actually in the middle, I did the workshop, and at one break, I was like, oh my gosh. Like first I like, the whole path is I stumbled upon, and I'm like, oh, you can, on this page, you could put 4 videos in a row. I'm like, oh, that's what I need to do. I'm like, this is 4 videos. And like literally in a half an hour, and I don't normally script my videos, but in a half an hour, I wrote the script of 4 videos, which is, it's about an hour and a half of content. And I totally just scripted it, and it flew out of me, and there was no anything. So ultimately you get to this place where you trust that like, ooh, like a half hour of inspired work is way better than 4 hours of trying to force yourself into something.
Yes.
So it's a process, and hopefully that there was like the nuggets in there. And it's hard to answer that question in some ways because it's so nuanced and it's such a learning journey.
Yeah, it is very individual, but
Mhm.
it's always good to get other people's perspectives on it, and you never know how it's going to impact yours.
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
brings me to my next what turns you on creatively, spiritually, and or emotionally?
Oh my gosh. I love this question. Uh Growth. like like at its core, it's growth, and it's being a raw human, I would say, in that, right? So spiritually, like growth is what turns me on. Like I'm not about, I don't know, I was even having a kind of a spiritual conversation last night, and I'm like, this doesn't even, I can't even, it's all about growth for me. It's about growing. Um emotionally, that's what turns me on. Like what I love is seeing someone grow, however that is, right? Seeing them take a chance, seeing them, whether that's personal or in my clients, like it's the same in my personal life. Um, and
Mhm.
spiritually, emotionally, and creatively, like that is what gives me the juice. If I can creatively do something that's about growth, like that's the magic. It's one word.
Okay, and so now I'm just curious. Tell me about your childhood. What was your childhood like?
What was my childhood like? I'm the oldest. Um, my
Of how many?
of three.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my parents are still married. And I'm also the oldest, like the oldest cousin on my mom's side. So I'm very much the oldest, and what that entails.
Yep.
So, like my childhood, and I've done a lot of work on this, on seeing this differently. I think you would ask me 3 weeks ago, there's some things I would say about my mom, but I've really been stepping into like seeing her world through a different lens and what was going on in her life at this age and what was happening. And yeah, like my mom is amazing. Like my mom is the mom that all my friends who had crappy homes, like they all came to our house. Like it was literally a revolving door, and multiple people lived with us in high school, and that was what it was. And I love her, and she's amazing. And we still had our mother-daughter stuff. We still are, going through that, because I think that is
Never goes away.
it never goes away. And I had a friend once say, every entrepreneur I know has to goes through this bigger mom struggle, right? And I think it's partly because that's our growth. That's who we called here to help us be more human and grow and do that. Like I believe we made that choice before we came down here,
Mhm.
um in a lot of instances. Sometimes maybe not. I don't actually believe maybe we always choose everything, but in mine, I'm sure that that's what happened, is like, this is a great opportunity for growth throughout your whole life. And so my childhood was good. I tell the story a lot about my dad worked a lot, and this is where a lot of my money story came from. My dad would generally, go to work before we got up, and he came home for a really late dinner, and basically like we had dinner and went to bed. And he often worked the weekends when I was younger. And so for me, that left that impact of like, you have to work really hard to make money.
What
And
did he do?
he worked in oil and gas.
Oh,
And
okay.
so that's a 24-hour,
Yeah.
that's happening 24 hours, especially with what he was doing. And so it's very much, you move at the speed of like what's happening. And, like you can't,
Mhm.
like something's supposed to take 7 days, and sometimes it takes 10, and so it's really, and there's always calls that, we would take reports in the morning. Because somebody would call every day. He was literally checking in every day, which now I can see actually in this moment as even a blessing of like sort of the way that my life, I've been able to I've created some of that same thing, because I check in with my people like every day,
Mm.
and I love it. And so it's really perspective in what you create. And what I learned as I got older is, for me, I thought it was working really hard and you had to, and then my dad, he had a lot of success, but he based that on luck. He told me one time I got lucky 7 times, and I
Mhm.
was in the right place at the right time when a position opened, and they're like, do you want to try it? And so for me, I was like, well, how do you create that? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how to like,
Give me more.
yeah, I don't know how to grow. Like, how do you recreate that situation?
Yeah.
And
7 times. Wow.
yeah. And that was really, and so for me, that created a lot of my money story. And I love, because his work ethic is part of what created me, but also like this story of how hard I had to work, and really trying to figure out how I was going to make it work, because I could not see myself. I couldn't figure out even how to take the same path he did, because like he said, he got lucky 7 times. So that created a lot of my story. And I will say, as I got older, like my dad loved what he did. like he loved it worked his brain in a way. It was like the connection to people that he wanted. I mean, it really was, I don't think he was working as hard as I thought he would. Like he was working hard. Don't get me wrong. He wasn't just like going and playing golf every morning, but for him, I don't think it felt like it was as hard as it looked like to me, like the story that I was creating.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's that whole thing where if you do a job that you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
So,
And
okay.
yeah, that is what he loved, and it's who he was or who he is and who he, yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so then what profession would you like to try? If you could try any profession whatsoever that you haven't done before, what would it
Oh,
be?
ooh, fun. What profession? I mean, I don't know if this counts because I'm technically like my own CEO, but I would like to go in the top of a company and just like, like, what can we
I
do
respect
here?
that.
Yeah, what can we
Like
do?
I run this show.
Right. Exactly.
You answer to me now.
Yes.
Okay. What industry?
Industry. Oh, one that has a lot of is like kind of set in their ways. I'd like to go in and shake one up.
Shake it up.
Yeah, it would be like, no, we're gonna visualize this, and we're gonna decide our future self of the company, and we're gonna.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome.
Where are we going? What's happening?
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Are you behaving? Are you like doing your work today in alignment with where we're going?
Oh, awesome. I love that. Okay, so then who or what is your biggest inspiration?
Who or what? I think I'm blessed to have a lot of different inspirations in my life. And this is gonna sound probably cheesy right now, but right now my biggest, like in the last few years, like my biggest inspiration really is in my future self. Like that
That's
vision,
awesome.
yeah, of what I'm capable of and now what I'm certain I can become. And the closer I get, I just move that out and see more of her. And so for me, really, that's a lot of it. Of course, like my mom is a strong woman. Like, she would go into company and do that CEO thing. She is loved and she's powerful, and she knew how to create money. Like she ended up, she made a decision to stay at home when her job was creeping up in hours and my dad's was obviously very hour intensive. It just wasn't working. And so she made the choice to stay at home and then create her own real estate empire. Like, so obviously, yeah, she has some influence. I have a great aunt that is all about being powerful and, she's this story, she's born in the 20s. So, and she, had a job and she supported herself. And every year when she went to her accountant, he would say, "You make a lot of money for a woman." And I just but she just she never, that was like, yeah, I feel like, I imagine her being like, yeah, you're right. Like,
own it.
Right. And she kept going. And I think that's a huge influence about how to make yourself happy. I think she's one of the best
amazing.
influences of that. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I have two more questions and I think they're kind of short.
Perfect. I mean, they'll be awesome.
Okay. So the first one is, what's your favorite word?
My favorite word. Ooh, I love this. Possibility.
Possibility.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's just like because when we're in the place of what is possible, like we're just seeing the possibilities, like we're just open.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, and then my last one, I'm taking a page out of James Lipton from the Inside the Actor Studio for this one. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Oh, you did even more than I thought I made you for.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
That's a good question.
It is, isn't it? It's my favorite
it's
question.
amazing. I love it. Yes.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah.
And what a great answer.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's all in that future self.
It is. Yeah. That would, I got chills answering that. I love it.
Yeah, it's good. You should look up the other answers from people.
Yeah, I am going
Yeah,
to
it's
for
great.
sure. And I had a second favorite word after I said it. I was like, oh,
Yes,
I
tell
know what
me.
it is. Enchanted.
Oh, yes, of
Right?
course it is.
Which means to add magic to. And I think
Yes,
that's what I do in my life is take
I agree.
yeah, you can take
You are
anything,
magic.
add magic to it. Thank you.
Yes, I agree completely. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Cassie.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for such great questions and for being part of the Year of Growth series. I always think about how many people are going to be impacted by your stories. So it's fun and I appreciate that. And do you have a release date for your novel, for your romance novel?
So I'm doing this planning thing where I have 6 months and I'm going to write 3 books. And then at the end of the
Yes.
6 months, going to just release those within a month of each other and start my next series while those are releasing. So then that way I'm ahead of the game. Um,
Yes.
just because I work with authors, I know how the scheduling works. And then that way I can get my pre-orders up before anything's actually released and, the whole thing. And because I'm a publicist and a graphic designer, I can just kind of do everything on my own.
I love it. And I love that you're doing this. I'm so excited. So
It was time.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. So what was how did that, I realized this was my interview, but I'm really curious about this. And I think,
Cool.
what was the inspiration that hit, like, how did that unfold? Or did you just wake up one morning and you're like, it's time?
It was a little bit of both. I've been toying with the idea for probably about 2 or 3 years. Before I started my company, it was an idea I had toyed with, but it's not that I'm not the writer in my family because my mom's a writer, my older brother's a writer. I do write. I just tend to do short form like poetry or short stories. So long form it's scary. And so I decided to focus on my career as a publicist in the publishing industry. And so I've been toying with the idea of writing for about 3 years. And then I just kind of met someone in December or January who really inspired me and made me want to be more than I was. And then on top of that, losing that client really out of nowhere, after the new year, they're like, oh yeah, let's have our team meeting. Let's do our meeting thing. And then they're like, effective immediately, we're not using contractors anymore. So send us the invoice for whatever hours you're owed. And that's that. And literally within 2 days, I was completely locked out of every account. And it really kind of messed with my finances just because at the time, it was my biggest lump sum that I was receiving. And, I moved through it. It was something I had wanted to happen. It just happened a little sooner than I expected, but I had manifested that. So, so it was just kind of like this culmination of losing this income, meeting someone who inspired me, and always kind of toying with this idea, and just really realizing that I had gotten a little stagnant and it was time to move up, rise up. And so, yeah, I started it before I went to India. I'm getting back into it now. So I'm thinking it'll be June or July at the latest, June if I can push it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we will definitely make sure that we get those links. Maybe not when this comes out, but we will get them up there.
Yeah, we'll see.
I know, I'm excited. And will people look for Rebekah Zink, or will they look for something? No, okay.
No. They will be looking for someone completely different. Author name to be determined.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I love it.
Yeah. I figured I could just start a separate adventure and keep Rebekah Zink as business, acting, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to interview me today and catching up our listeners on what's happening now.
Of course. Thank you so much for being so open and wonderful.
Oh, my pleasure. And thank you all for listening to this interview with Rebekah. And make sure to catch her whole series because it's amazing, the transformation that she went through. And she shares that journey, which is important. So,
Actually, not to agree or anything, but
yeah, right?
It
It was,
is.
yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you all for listening and make sure to tune into our next show.
Thank you for joining us on The More Money Show. To learn how to identify your current money story, go to identifyyourmoneystory.com.